Well, in case anybody's about to turn our show off, I would suggest you hang tight because I am going to be the devil's advocate on a very, very important topic, and it is the property tax relief that all of us, including myself, retirees, business owners, are really confused about whether this is something that they're going to have to pay for in the long run, or who's it going to hurt, who's it going to help. And so I have a very special person here, Ryan Chamberlain. He is a state representative here, and he's here to help us understand what is the property tax relief all about. Who does it help? Who does it hurt? And we are not here to talk about Democrats and Republicans. This is not what we're here to do. You guys get to pick your sides, and I'm all good with that. But I wanted a place for people to listen to the truth about what it is and not just hearsay, because I've heard everything from my offices to the business leaders in town. And Ryan, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Awesome, Charisse. Thank you for having me on. And really, thanks for being willing to have the discussion. I know, listen, both sides of the aisle want property tax relief. There's no doubt about that. I've had conversations with both Republicans, Democrats, independents. Everybody wants relief. The big question that comes up is, how do we pay for things that are important to us? Mm-hmm. And that's where there is some maybe disagreement or some debate or some negotiation that has to take place. But I think to establish this conversation, I'd like to just kind of take us to what got us here in the first place, because, property taxes are, deemed one of the most frustrating, some even say the most hated tax in America, for a couple of reasons. And I'll tell you, this topic ruffles feathers. Yeah. Because when you start talking about eliminating property taxes and the money that's coming into local counties and cities, it opens up a can of worms from an accountability process, and it reveals part one of what I like to talk about that everybody's frustrated with. And I think most have a sense that there's some misuse of funds. There's even words like fraud being thrown around. We're certainly doging our state like the country's doging the country. And when you dig in and find billions and billions of dollars that perhaps is being spent on items that are questionable, or nobody can answer why it's being spent or where it's going, it uncovers questions, and people start to get defensive on that. So step number one, I believe we can have major property tax relief, or any tax relief that's burdening our citizens, just with cleaning up some of the problematic things that we're spending money on. But let's even back it up further than that, because that is a big issue. I'll hit three of them, and then any question. Let's go back and forth on this, because I believe that one of the eye-opening ideas and concepts, one of the things that I ran on when I first was working to be elected in the Florida House of Representatives, was the idea that nobody really owns their home. I mean, when your home's paid off and you continue to have to pay to the government for the home that you bought for the rest of your life, and they can have a lien on your home, and potentially down the road, your home could even be seized, something you paid for that maybe was inherited by a family member, and the government's going to seize it for back taxes. Who really owns it if someone always has a lien on it? I like to call it an undisclosed second morttage.
Do you think the founding fathers wanted that for us?
I do not think so. Matter of fact, I was at an event a week or so ago, and they had we'll call him a George Washington impersonator, but I got to visit with our founding father, George, and ask him some property tax questions. I don't think he liked the idea of the government having their hands in all the things the government has their hands in today. So, that is an issue. I think that when you hear people like myself who have filed bills and who are really aggressive on the idea of eliminating property taxes, there's also this idea of replacing property taxes. We have to have funding, but at the root of that, I like people to own their own property. I like the government not to have liens on all property in our state and in our country. That is a big one. And I've got a couple of more, but any thoughts on that?
Let's talk about the retiree and the business owner. Is it better or is it worse for them? And the retiree, is it better or worse for them? If a retiree has their home over the last 30 years paid off, how does this affect them? How does it help them? Where do they get caught up in an extra fee somewhere else? They're wondering who is paying if they get this deal. How does everybody save? How does everybody win? Or is it a losing fight 5 years down the road once it does issue if it does get passed?
Well, you asked some specific questions, and let me answer them in somewhat of an order here. Most business owners are also homeowners. See, right now we don't have a sales tax on property. I'm proposing we might go there. That might be one thing. We talk about solutions here in a little bit. But right now there's no sales tax on property. There's some doc stamps when they buy their home. But what they do is when they sign the paperwork, they say, I'm not going to pay a sales tax, but I'll pay $3,000 to $5,000 to $10,000 a year the rest of my life, every single year. So if we're able to relieve people of that $3,000 to $5,000 to $10,000 a year, certainly if they're a business owner, they're getting relief on the homeowner side. The second thing, and I'll back up to one of the other points that has gotten us to where we're at today, property taxes is really the only tax in America that we pay taxes on unrealized gains. And so think about that as a business owner, think about that as a homeowner. And that is, if you bought a piece of property for $100,000 and it goes up to $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in property, it's really the only tax where you get to pay on the equity that you've never cashed out on. You're paying yearly taxes on money you've never received based on some estimate that somebody behind a desk says that your property's worth. That creates frustration. But I want to say this, between what's coming on the Florida ballot now and what you might see across the country in times coming is just for homestead exemption. And I'm all for homeowner relief. However, what Representative Ryan Chamberlain is working on and has been working on for years now and has some serious plans coming out, I'm for all property tax relief, meaning the person that owns the local pizza shop for the last 30 years, I don't like the government having a lien on their property either. So from a business owner standpoint, they need to know that what I'm fighting for, what I'm working on, and the bills that I'm fighting are to eliminate property taxes on businesses as well. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to figure out how or need to figure out how to create revenue, but I'm a business guy. I'm an entrepreneur. I do think there's a consensus, especially in states like Florida. We want to be pro-business friendly. And I know businesses sometimes feel like things get shifted on them, but we're putting some stopgaps in here because we don't need to do that to generate the revenue to cover the things that are really important, in my opinion. We need to come up with fair systems. And then you said something about retirees. So I'm answering them all in a little bit of a random order. And then
Thank you.
Hit me back. A retiree that's paid off their home, if we're eliminating property tax, and let's say we shifted some of the revenue streams to raising sales tax. Now, I'm not interested in raising sales tax necessarily, but if I have to pick between the two, pay a homeowner's tax the rest of my life or increase sales tax by 2 cents on the dollar, each cent in the state of Florida, for example, generates $8 billion a year. So just a couple of cents would eliminate all homeowners' property tax. If a retiree is only paying taxes based on the things they're purchasing rather than the equity in their home, the net result is a whole lot less money out of their pocket every year from a retiree standpoint. So I think retirees are going to look really good in this scenario when we end up.
So when we're talking about raising sales taxes or paying the homeowner's tax, in dollars, has anybody come up with what that means in dollars and cents? Because I think the Americans, they just want to know, what is the math? How does it help them? And if it's only going to help me by $100, then why are we making a fuss of it? So has that plan or that math been done yet?
It has been done. And I've focused obviously on Florida. Florida is one of the top 2 or 3 leading states in policy for the country. So things that happen in Florida tend to go all over the place. We're the 13th to 15th, depending on who's saying it, largest economy in the world compared to countries. We're a $1.8 trillion economy. So when you figure something that works for Florida, it usually will work for all the smaller states, right? But let's take a lower case scenario. I'm working for a much bigger case scenario. But let's say it only did benefit somebody $100 a month. And we ask the question, why are we going through all the fuss? We're going through all the fuss because you don't own your property. The government does. The government has a lien on it. And you're paying on equity. Your family's going to pay on equity that, if they never want to sell the property, they can't get out from underneath the rent. And as a retiree, you're never going to stop paying for schooling. You're never going to stop, you've already paid to bring your kids through school. So there's a lot of frustrating points that are involved with, even if we could break even, if we just figured out a way that everybody pays the same, but you own your property, it's worth the fuss. It really is worth the fuss. So I want to say that that's part of the fight. It's not just about the money, although when you look at ways to generate revenue that are fair, more fair to the entire population, or creative ways that aren't being tapped, it's going to make more sense, and most people are going to end up spending less. For example, in Florida, you asked specific numbers. We have increased property taxes, by the way, 50% in the last 4 years across the state. Just 4 years ago, we were only collecting $45 billion. This past year, we collected $65 billion, and there's no end in sight.
That's a big number, 50% over the last 4 years. That is insane. And the reason why it's even more insane, as you said that, is because in Florida, people are having a hard time hanging on to their house because of that. And so more of a reason to really think through this strategy, because, you could be next. You never know what could change in your life, lose a job.
No, listen, Charisse, the average first-time buyer in our state and in our country is going up, meaning, well, I'll keep using Florida because that's where we're from, but you could apply this to whatever state's listening. Just a few years back, the average first-time buyer in Florida was 29 years old. Today, it's over 40. He or she is over 40. It's trending towards 45 to 50 over the next few years. And the foreclosure rates are going up simply because the monthly payment is going up faster than the percentage of income increase, and people are getting crunched out of the homes that they thought they had bought for a certain price, but the monthly payment keeps going up, and it will keep going up the rest of their life. And they're finally saying, I can't sustain this. This is not going to work for me, because the older they get, maybe their working income comes down a little bit. They're living off of more of a fixed income. And I know you specialize in that, but when you're living off of a fixed income, you don't want to see your expenses continually going up at an outrageous amount. So when we're looking at $65 billion, we've got to slow that down. It's all tied to people's properties. And there are creative ways. Florida is a big travel state. 143 million people travel in and out of Florida every year. If they get pulled over, or if there's a fire in their apartment, or if they have a health issue, the Florida police, fire department, emergency groups take care of all these travelers. And guess who pays for it? The homeowners. It all comes out of property taxes. Yes. I'm a proponent that there's a creative, competitive way for us to ask the travelers to contribute to a safety fund, with whatever, their hotels, their Airbnbs, their Ubers. It could generate billions of dollars that would immediately, again, because it's people out of our state, out of our country, that immediately would come off of the backs and relief in the pocketbooks of the homeowners in the state of Florida. Billions. That's a creative solution that has not been, worked on, that I'm proposing and filing bills to work on that now, because we can, as a smart group of people in a $1.8 trillion economy, figure out a more creative way to generate the billions we need to pay for the things that property taxes are paying for.
You said we went from 45 billion to 65 billion. Where did that 20 billion go?
That's the question. That's the question that very few people want to answer. And it raises the accountability question that's causing many of our counties to, again, some of these people I really get along with. Some of them are repeating information. Some of them don't have all the facts. I'm trying to do my best to lay this out in the nicest ways possible. When we talk about cutting property tax relief, the first thing that happens across the state is the cities and counties and the people that are spending all the money say, we can't do that. We're going to, have to cut police and fire and safety by, 30% or 40%. Or we're going to have to cut it by $30 million or $50 million. It's going to hurt us too bad. What they're not telling you is that their budgets have increased by $200 million in the last 4 years in a county. And they're upset that we're trying to pull it back by 30 to 40 to 50 million by to get it going backwards a little bit. And the reality is, the net is, most of these counties, even if we pass all this property tax relief, instead of them being up 50% increased revenue, they'll only be up 20 or 30%, but they'll still be up. They still have more money, even if this passes. The counties and our state has more property tax revenue than it's ever had in the history of our state and in our country. So there is such a thing as treating our local governments like a business. Businesses have their own economy, their own ebbs and flows. Our personal finances have their own ebbs and flows. And sometimes we have to, stop spending money on extra things that we really don't need, we think are important, but they're not like absolute necessities. And nobody likes cutting it. When it comes to government, listen, I got into government to help get government out of some things. When government starts figuring out a way to create revenue, they don't ever want to go backwards. They will spend every dollar they get. And then when the economy dips, now we got to have more. So think about this, Charisse. We're in a system that even if the economy goes up and down, the people and their properties are taxed at an increased rate. I mean, it's not going to go down. It's not going to go down because the government has figured out a way to have an ever increasing revenue stream without a whole lot of accountability. And they've got more money than they've ever had. So we're working hard to fix this, what I consider a real injustice done to the people.
I want to go back to tourism real quick. I'm going to be a little devil's advocate here because you said, you have a plan for tourism and having
an idea.
Okay, love it. What happens when markets crash and the economy's going down? It's a sinking ship for 2 years. It takes 5 years to crawl out of this hole. So how do we fix that part when that day comes? It's not if, it's actually when.
Great question. And coming from somebody that helps people set their lives up for the ups and downs and the retirement. And what I'd like, Charisse, is someone like yourself, maybe we need to have you run for office at some point, help our counties and our cities build reserves, base their budgets off of a 20 or 30-year history and not just a 12-month history, so that they're not spending everything. The plans that I'm looking at are involving data from 20 years ago when the market crashed and real estate crashed. It includes COVID. It includes all these big ups and downs. And the bottom line is we can create reserves. We don't have to spend every dollar we take in. We can, and if we do end up with an emergency, we do what our government and our legislatures decide to do. We can call emergency sessions, just like we don't know if there's a hurricane coming this year. And if it causes a lot of damage, we may have to come together and figure out how to create revenue to fix that problem. There is emergency protocol for that. However, if we're really budgeting and really just not spending every dollar we get, and right now Florida's sitting good. Our current governor has maxed out reserves. Matter of fact, he constitutionally can't collect any more money in certain reserve accounts. We could easily absorb this opportunity to make history with property taxes, although we've got to, again, set ourselves up to make sure we can sustain the next 20 years. But we have the data, even if we got to go back 30 years or 40 years, we have the historical data to make great decisions. Right now, we're just not making them.
We have Ryan Chamberlain, our state representative here. And I am being the devil's advocate, asking questions a lot of my clients are asking, people I'm hearing in the community, business owners. And we were just talking about revenue. How does it help people? How does it not help people? How do we lower this tax? Because people are losing their homes and we're seeing bankruptcies. And how does it help or hurt our first-time home buyers? So Florida is one of the few states that is having this conversation. And this is why we have Ryan on the show. It's because I want to get more informed. And I'm tired of the hearsay and the people saying, well, I don't know. I'm a 50-50. I'm like, how can you be 50-50 when you only know the data behind it? So we're doing some math. We're talking through it.
Yeah, Charisse, you're saying I appreciate what you're saying and how you're saying it and how you're positioning yourself, because I think of you as an expert at what you do. Matter of fact, I know you to be, and I know the reputation you have with some of the most credible people that I know.
Thanks.
And some of what I know that you're really good at in the retirement space is helping people navigate the misinformation that's out there so that they don't make bad decisions.
Yeah. And
I'm going to say with the property tax scenario, there's a lot of misinformation. And I think people have to go back to the root of what they're listening to. They have to pay attention. They're going to ultimately have to make up their own mind because they're going to be voting and or making a decision. But when the misinformation is coming from the people that benefit financially from something not changing, you do have to ask yourself, okay, let me get a little bit more deep into this so I can see what the root of this is. And are there solutions being talked about? Right now, there's not a lot of solutions to battle the misinformation. So the misinformation can potentially win the battle. We do have solutions. We are talking some solutions. I am out, we'll call it campaigning those solutions right now, because whether it's this November or in 2028, the next few years, we're going to need to see an overhaul of things like property taxes for one simple reason. It's not sustainable. So it doesn't matter if somebody likes it or not. It's not working for the people. And we've got to come together and come up with some solutions. And I would ask those spreading misinformation what their, or what I would consider misinformation, their opinions, okay? And they may have some great opinions. But whatever their opinion is, I always am engaging in questions and answers when it comes to, okay, what's your solution? Because doing nothing, letting the status quo continue, results in a very bad end result for our people, our economy, our citizens. So that's what we're fighting for here. And when I hear the word misinformation, I do think that that's what I come on shows like this for, is to help people think about it from multiple angles. They'll make their own decision. But when they get all the facts, they're going to see we could figure this out if and when we want to. And that's what I'm working on.
Let's talk about DeSantis, because was all for this, and I think he still is, but there's been some changes, and I've heard some rumors. So can you tell me a little bit about what's going on there behind the scenes? I know you talk to him a lot.
Well, our governor is a great governor. It will go down in history as one of the greatest here in Florida and in our country. I mean, just for the right man at the right time. What happens is you do have term limits. He has term limits. He's only got a few months left in office, and he'll be moving on to do other things, and he'll decide what that is. But, he wanted some major property tax relief. But the way that it works, it's a lengthier process than what you'd want it to be, because property taxes are baked into the Florida state constitution. And when something's inside of a constitution, you can't just pass laws to mess with it. It has to be voted on by the people. It has to go on ballots. And there's a big conversation that takes place. And in my opinion, our governor, Ron DeSantis, ran out of time to do what he ultimately would have been able to do. Now, we're in the process of electing a new governor. We will have one in November. I'm working with leadership in both the House, both the Senate. We'll see where the conversation can go. There is another option besides the legislature, though. There's something called a constitutional amendment, a citizen-led constitutional amendment, meaning you can go get enough signatures to force something to be on a ballot. I have recently announced that I'm heading up a citizen-led constitutional amendment to gather enough signatures, kind of as a backup plan for whether we can or can't get it done through the legislature. The people can choose to get something done. We've seen things like abortion and marijuana and big topics make it to the ballot through signatures and through campaigns. It hasn't been done. One other state got it done, but it didn't pass. But I would like for Florida to be the first citizen-led constitutional amendment on property taxes that actually passes. That's going to take a few years. I'm working with an organization called endpropertytaxnow.com. Anybody interested in this topic, especially if you're in Florida, that's a cool place to go stay in tune with all of this. But when it comes to Governor Ron DeSantis, he's done great things to elevate this conversation. So I want to give him a lot of credit. I basically am one of the voices on the House of Representatives side that has pushed to elevate it. But as governor, he's got a big microphone. He did end up getting an amendment that's going to go on our November ballot. But by the time it went through the process, it's just simply a lot less than what he wanted. So he's going to vote for it. He says he's going to vote for it. I'm going to vote for it. But it's ultimately not the elimination of property taxes what's happening. It is a major relief. The government's still going to have a lien, even if you vote yes on your property, but you're just going to have a relief plan for homestead exemption for the homeowners in Florida. And it's still, even if it all works out, it's only going to lower our property taxes from $65 billion back to about $53 billion, which is still $13 billion higher than what we were collecting a few years ago. So that's what's happening with the topic today in Florida.
Let's jump over a hair, because this homestead property tax relief it is like the buzz of positivity and negativity. There's like those retirees are now telling me, well, who's going to pay for it? And the business owners are like, yeah, who's going to pay for that? Is that us? And so 40 counties, if I recall, in Florida that could really go belly up if this does get pushed. So what about those 40 counties in Florida that if this does get pushed, like what happens to them? Because I think the business owners are really curious about this, and it's a little nerve-wracking because those 40 counties, if this is important, we want them to vote too. If that, but how does it affect them?
Let me open it up with the scare tactics that are being used. They're able to really get down and personal by telling people on the property tax issue, you're not going to have police that are taking care of you. Or if you have a fire at your house, nobody's going to show up. They're scaring people with real life things, or the schools are going to shut down. This is not true. Our counties have the funds to do this. They need to stop maybe funding some pet projects. They need to recalibrate, which they don't want to do. No, they don't ever want to stop funding things they start funding. But there is a call for redirecting funds in the appropriate way in this messaging. And that is a discussion that I'm taking to the debate. Not to get mad at anybody. It's just a real debate on how to go about doing that. But the scare tactics, I think, emotionally hit people differently because of the types of things that are said about property taxes. On the affordability question, and we can come back to that. You can give me any other top questions on that. But on the affordability, you're right. There are fiscally constrained counties, for example, in Florida. Many of our counties don't generate enough revenue with the current property tax system. And to me, as a business owner, property taxes have been being collected for literally hundreds of years in Florida alone. If our county still can't survive on property taxes and the government has to bail them out every single year, then I would argue as a business owner, the current system doesn't work anyway. Why are we continuing to fund something? Some of these counties have never been able to pay for the things that are important without additional government help. So why are we not rethinking this whole plan in a more scalable way? Because when it was invented, Florida didn't have 23 million people and growing by millions and trajecting towards 25 to 30 million over the next whatever decade. It had half or less than half or just a few million people, and we've just stuck with the system, and we've kept adding on exemptions. We now have 38 different what I would consider loopholes or exemptions that people can take, which makes the system, that's the fourth thing that I wanted to talk about. The property tax system is so complicated, you can go ask elected officials like I have all over the state to explain it to you, and none of them can. The average homeowner can't look at their bill and tell where their money's going, and I think that's unfair to the citizens of Florida. So if for anything, to be more transparent, to stop making us pay it on our equity, to allow us to actually own our own home, these are all worthwhile reasons, and the fact that to eliminate and replace, and that we have a great economy to where replacing these billions is possible. For all those reasons, I feel like this is a worthwhile effort for me to keep pushing to help as many millions of people as I can.
I think for everyone, we want to live in safe communities. We want our schools and our kids to feel safe. We want the best teachers, the best education. So we have to take care of those people who are also taking care of us that give this ultimate security. I mean, that's just the American way. So how do we keep those dollars going there while saving on the, this tax relief for our properties at the same time and making all worlds happy?
Well, speaking to the conversation of homestead, just the homeowner part of this, understand this, Charisse. Last year, Florida collected $65 billion. I mentioned that. Only $18 billion of it came from the homeowners. The other 40-something billion came from vacation homeowners, commercial properties, second homes that do not have homestead exemption, meaning it's not their primary residence. So even if we relieve the whole $18 billion for the homeowners in Florida, we still have a record high 40-something billion to work with. So there is no such thing as us eliminating funding for police, fire, and safety. There is such thing as us redirecting the 18 billion that there, is there potentially 18 billion out there in waste or fraud or going to things that taxpayers wouldn't want their money going to? I personally believe there is. I think we clean it up. And not only can we begin by eliminating homestead exemption and be the first state in the country to do that, lead the way, but then we can look for creative ways to relieve all the business owners as well. That may take a few more years. It's not going to happen overnight. Yeah. So I think that there's this call out, like there's this decisions are being made without them being thought through. Again, scare tactics.
Yeah.
Our county has money to not have to cut the important things that it needs to cut. There may be some spending that, I personally believe that the counties across the state don't want the taxpayers to see where all the money's going, because the taxpayers would get irate if they see millions of dollars being spent on this, and that.
Of course.
And the potholes are still in the road. Yeah, that's the other thing too, Charisse. We've increased 50% of our revenue, but go poll the county and see if everybody thinks the services have increased by 50%. No, they actually think, most people think that, especially in a growing area, that the ratio of service to people has gone down, even though the revenue has gone up significantly. So all these frustrations cause for people that are elected to start questioning how we can improve this. Otherwise, why would I get elected? I'm supposed to work on this stuff. I'm supposed to try to keep making it better and setting it up for the next decade and the next generation so that they don't have worse problems than we have today.
So there's people out there that are like, what about the libraries and the rec centers and those in the parks? What gets pulled from them? Like, how do we address those costs? Because nobody wants to give up funding. So how does that affect those people?
Well, some of the things you just mentioned are high up there on items that people do care about. And so what I'd like to see is the list of, you asked a question early in this conversation. Hey, where's the 50% increase going?
Yeah.
Okay, let's answer that question. Okay, I don't have all the answers to that to give you today. And some of our smaller counties, and I will say this to the county I live in, for example, I'm not in the largest county, not in the smallest county. A lot of the problematic increase is in some of the bigger cities. Okay, again, the bigger a city gets, the easily it is to kind of maneuver money in a way that's hard to trace and track. And we got to stop that. And so this rate, again, I opened up by saying the property tax issue pushes a lot of different buttons because it begs the question, where's everything going? And a lot of people don't want you looking under the hood of everything. And I believe we should. I believe it's time. I believe that the bills that I'm filing, the citizen-led constitutional amendment that I'm pushing, working with endpropertytaxnow.com, is a major component to helping create a more sustainable future. And I'll say this, I'm sitting down with sheriffs, I'm sitting down with city managers, I'm sitting down with our commissioners. I want to hear their ideas, but I don't want to just hear it can't be done. I really don't accept that at all as a valid answer. I want solutions let's discuss some ideas. And some of these people are really smart. It's almost like until you force it to have to happen, people are going to hang on to what they have as long as they can. And so I am trying to force this conversation to have to happen.
I mean, let's look at a business owner, myself, for example. I didn't always follow my P&Ls. And so I had to hire somebody to help me with my P&Ls so I would be more fiscally responsible, right, about where things are going. So I had to make hard decisions on what I could fund, what I couldn't do anymore if I wanted to scale the business. So there's hard decisions that we have to make. But if it's for the greater good of your families and your businesses and growth, then we have to do it. But it's very hard in the political world because I feel like the government does not understand basic economics. And it's frustrating for me, who's all about doing the math, helping people with their budgets and all this stuff. But why can't we get the government to get on the same page as all of us who are working for something to understand basic economics, to actually filter through all this junk so we could, be a little bit more even, Stephen? I mean, we're in trillions of dollars of debt, Ryan, and it's not getting any better. And Elon Musk didn't help us out at all, right? So, what is the fix?
Listen, you're bringing up good points. And by the way, Elon Musk was never elected.
No, of course not.
But you bring a point, and I do want to bring this up because we're not talking about party on this this podcast. But when we elect people to run our economics, our economy, that have never owned a business or never ran a business, it seems that we have a trend of electing people in our state and in our counties, our state, and in our federal government that are making big dollar decisions, P&L type decisions, but they've never owned a business. They're not thinking about it the way we're thinking. And I think it should be a criteria to consider strongly when we're choosing who we're working to elect. What is their track record? What have they done? And again, it's not the only thing, but our country was founded by entrepreneurs, by business owners, by people that understood exactly the things you're talking about. When we elect people that don't understand that, it creates a real friction inside of everything that we're working on here. And those of us that are asking those questions, why can't government figure this out? It's because we have put people in those positions that don't understand it. Mm-hmm. And so that is an important piece when it comes to this type of topic. And I'll say this. If your income's not going up by 10% a year, which most people's are not, most individuals' income is not. If your inflation is not going up 10%, right now it's in the 2 to 3% range. At COVID's peak, I don't know that it hit 10. Why would we accept a 50% increase in property taxes as acceptable? If our income's inflation at it, why are we allowing that to happen? And so I think it really is, what are the questions we're asking? It's why this podcast, I believe, hopefully will be enlightening to the listeners. Because if you don't ask the right questions, you definitely don't get the right answers. The question shouldn't be always again, it's an important question. How are we going to pay for things? That is a question. Another question is where has the money been going? And can you make your case as to why you need a 50% increase and you have no plan to relieve us at all? Why don't we really ask those questions? And those are the questions I'm asking. At the same time, creating solutions that'll keep funding the important things. Okay,
so when do we actually see a proposal on if we get a deduction on our homestead taxes or if it's going to get cut? Do we have that coming up soon?
First of all, there's, that is what everybody's debating right now. I'm not sure this will pass, with the amount of misinformation that's going out there. I'm not sure it's going to pass in November. And that's going to be a shame because property tax is going to go up again. Everybody get ready to spend more money next year than you spent this year. And still not know where all the money's going if we're not careful. Now, I'm already working on 2028, but in propertytaxnow.com, we are designing that to be the place to answer these questions.
Okay.
I filed a series of bills this last year called Freedom 123. It was the first comprehensive plan to eliminate and replace and to go through some of the stuff you're talking about for people. They can go and watch that there, that, they could pay attention to the bills there. Now, those bills didn't pass. They generated a lot of discussion, and sometimes you got to bring bills back a few years in a row. But that discussion is in motion. It's hidden behind all this, other front page misinformation, scare tactic stuff right now. But I do believe it's getting ready to hit the airwaves a whole lot more. And hopefully we'll come back on in a few months and I can give you even a more solid update on the specifics there.
Yeah, well, if I could see more of the data out there and say, okay, so this is where it hurt, this is where it goes, federal, state, whatever, if I could see it, I could make a more informed decision. The problem is none of us get to see that. And us voters, we decide not to vote because we're like, is this BS again? Is this hearsay? Or is there something really going to take place? And can this really help Florida? I haven't decided if I'm voting for it or not voting for it, but I want to see some math. That's what I do every day. So why am I not expecting that from the state and the federal government to show us the same thing?
No, we absolutely should be. Great. And I love the question. And I'm going to redirect it a little bit. We should be asking every elected official, where's the money going? Because here we are talking about reducing money and everybody's saying, how are we going to pay for things? But nobody's really been asking, nobody's been putting out the data on where all the money is being spent right now. So you're right. More transparency is the answer. A game plan for how it all is going to work. I predicted last year at a press conference this was going to take 6 to 8 years because I don't want a knee-jerk reaction. I want it to work. Right. I want it to last, meaning we can start with some relief mechanisms. I have some ideas for relief this year that I didn't have last year that I'm going to bring back and push and hopefully get some traction with the next year, because the permanent solution has to be voted on by the people. It has to change what's in the Constitution. There has to be an agreement for how the money and the revenue is going to be collected and distributed. You know, how I want our counties to have control of certain funding. I don't think the state should be controlling all the money for all the schools. I think our counties should have that. So I've got some ideas for how our locals can control the funding and not just be state, moving it to state power. Even though I'm a state representative, I don't think the state should have power over every decision that needs to happen on a local level. So there's only so much we can cover in this time frame. Yeah. But this is the type of stuff that we've got to have ongoing conversations about, and hopefully the people will be well informed before they need to make a final decision. So,
Ryan, you've given us so much information. So before November, bring it to the table so we can share it with our audience. I think that'd be fabulous, because I think that's the truth teller in all of these conversations. So I think that's important. I know you have a book coming out. What's the name of this book? The book title is going to be In Property Tax Now. That's going to be the title. How do people get that book? Well, inpropertytaxnow.com is where it's going to be the safest place to get it. It should be available very, very soon. And it is heading to the printer as we speak. So I'm very excited about it. But inpropertytaxnow.com. Matter of fact, if you go there now, you can put your follow us, your email place to get emails from us. You'll be notified exactly when the book comes out. And it'll be available eventually on Amazon and everywhere as we speak. But inpropertytaxnow.com. Of course, you can follow me on my social, Rep Ryan Chamberlain. That's a way to follow. And I talk about this topic a lot. I have a lot of other topics too. This seems to be the one, though, that I get drawn into talking about the most. I would not want your job, Ryan. I would not want your job. I mean, you guys have to adapt to things, enduring, and then you get to grow through it to build trust. Talk to me about resiliency and what you have got to go through in your world, because you're talking not just for you, but every politician in the world, because it's a tough job. How do you manage all that? Well, I thank you for asking that question. I don't get asked that question a whole lot. I'll tell you, now that I am elected and I work with literally hundreds and hundreds of elected officials throughout the year. There's 120 House legislators, 40 senators, there's a governor, then there's all the congressional people in our area we get to work with, and then there's the locals. So it literally is hundreds of people. You will notice a difference now that you hear the way that I'm saying it between a politician or an elected official that takes things personal that are said about them versus those that don't take it personal, those that know that it's part of the game, it's part of the art of negotiation. Again, unless they're talking about my wife and my kids, it's probably wise for me not to take it personal, because they're most of the time, even if they mention my name, they're attacking an idea. And I think when you react personally, it drains you. Your energy levels are different than when you don't allow it. So from a resilience standpoint, you really do have to develop some thick skin, put up some borders, and try not to react too quick to the nonsense. I like to say there's so much noise out there in the social media world. You think about our founding fathers. I mean, it took days for just a message. If you wanted to talk bad about somebody, it was not go online, click a button, and it's everywhere. It's a different world, a different time. And so I think that's
a trait that successful business people have as well. I mean, if you're building businesses and you're taking everything personal, you get sucked down, your energy gets sucked into the drama rather than to the policy or the activity of what moves the needle forward. So I try to keep myself, not taking anything personal, knowing exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think when you know why you're doing it, there's an inner motivation that allows you to press forward than if you're just trying to figure out if this is for real or for not. So, I think that's true in business as well, in entrepreneurship. People start businesses all the time that don't succeed because there's just not the grit attached to the reason behind why they're doing it. And sometimes just doing it for the money in business doesn't sustain itself long term. There's got to be a deeper reason. And if you want to have fun, listen, I'm enjoying the process. I have been yelled at. I have been called names I don't want to repeat. But I have also not taken that personal. It's allowed me to equip myself to get better at my answers and to be able to come on here and really be able to do this without notes, so to speak. I mean, I'm jotting things down as you're asking questions just so I make sure I stay on. But this is something I care about, I'm working on. And so hopefully that comes through to the audience.
I coined a phrase, it's easy, but it's hard. But I'm going to make that in reverse for the politicians. It's hard, but I'm working on making it easy. So what you told me through resiliency, I think is fantastic because it's really controlling your emotions. It's also about being around the right people. So you have an amazing wife, you have a big family. I saw your family picture there. You just got a good looking family. And it sounds like you got the right people around you, supporting you along with your friends. And so we believe in mentorship. We believe in the people in our lives that speak to us, that bring us the energy. Don't tell me who your mentors, but you have mentors to help you keep going, to keeping those guardrails, to stay focused and not listen to that outside noise.
Well, absolutely. I think anyone that has arrived or is working on anything worthwhile didn't get there by themselves, right? I've been blessed as a young man to attend the right kind of church with the right kind of leadership and to get the right kind of guidance. Matter of fact, it was about 30 years ago that the pastor of my church brought to the church a box. I was a young 20-something-year-old guy, and he said, "Hey, we're gonna invite some of the people in the church to come watch this new series called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership." And
yes, John Maxwell.
It was the first leadership type book. I got a copy of the book, the exact copy from 30 years ago on my shelf behind me. And that book had an impact on me. I mean, I've read a lot of good books, but that one was the first. And so it caused me to go down a path that allowed mentors that although I have met John Maxwell, it allowed me to get focused on gleaning from people through the books that I was going to read and being intentional about growing that way, being intentional about the type of person that I wanted to really spend time with. And I think that is been something I've tried to help my children with. It's not just, hey, I want to make more money, so let me go spend time with somebody that's making a lot of money. Although you can learn certain things that way, you really want to be in, define the character of who you want to be known for and get around those kind of people that have a great family life, that have a great financial life, hopefully that have a great, physical fitness type life. And, who are you modeling after? And these are questions I started asking myself and continue to this day, have to be careful because, listen, we become who we spend time with, and the mentors that we pick can potentially guide us down a path we may or may not want if we're allowing ourselves to be guided by people that are not where we want to go. So all this stuff is important. Those are my short answers for it today, but I've been very blessed.
John Maxwell was asked one question. Out of those 21 leadership laws, what's the most important? And he went, all of them. Compounding, compound. Just keep on compounding the compound. And I went, that's so simple. Ryan, number one, thank you so much for coming on the show. If you're just happened to tune in at the end, we had the local state representative, Ryan Chamberlain. We were talking about the property tax relief, who it's going to affect and not affect. You hit the rewind button, go to our podcast, and Retirement Coffee Talk, any YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, you name it. And you really get some really great information. Ryan, thank you so much. We'd love to have you back. If people want to reach out to you after this, what's the best way to reach out to you?
The best way is probably through social. If it's campaign related or legislative related, they can go to repryanchamberlain.com.
Okay.
My handle on most of my political type stuff is Rep Ryan Chamberlain, but you can find me on all the socials. That's going to be the easiest way. And if you want to go a different route, you can Google my name, and it'll point you to hopefully the good articles that have been written about me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to your next sit down with us.
Thanks so much.
Well, as usual, live by design and not by default. And we'll see you here next week.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Coffee Talk podcast. If you have questions or would like to begin the process of building a tailored retirement plan, call Zinnia Wealth at 833-368-3680 or find us online at zinniawealth.com.
Investment advisory services offered through Zinnia Wealth Advisory, LLC, a registered investment advisor. The firm only conducts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded from registration requirements. Registration is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. Insurance products are offered through Zinnia Wealth Management, LLC, Florida license L078655, and Charisse Rivers, Florida license P037744. Zinnia Wealth Advisory, LLC, and Zinnia Wealth Management, LLC are affiliated entities. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the podcast and are subject to change. The information presented is not an offer to buy or sell or a solicitation of any offer to buy or sell any of the securities discussed. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Any legal or tax information provided in this podcast is general in nature. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Any client experience discussed on this show are unique to that client. Annuity and life insurance guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. If you withdraw money from or surrender your contract within a certain time after investing, the insurance company may assess a surrender charge. Withdrawals may be subject to tax penalties and income taxes. Persons selling annuities or other insurance products receive compensation for these transactions. These commissions are separate and distinct from fees charged for advisory services. Insurance products also contain additional fees and expenses. Social Security rules and regulations are subject to change at any time. Always consult with your local Social Security office before acting upon any information provided herein. References to specific investments should not be construed as being past specific recommendations. The returns for various indices discussed in this podcast do not represent the performance of the firm or any of its advisory clients. Returns do not reflect the impact that advisory fees will have on an investment. Past performance may not be indicative of future results. All investment strategies have potential for profit or loss. Different types of investments involve higher and lower levels of risk. There is no guarantee that a specific investment strategy will be suitable or profitable for an investor's portfolio. Historical performance returns for investment indexes and or categories usually do not deduct transaction and or custodial charges or advisory fees, which would decrease historical performance results. There are no guarantees that a portfolio will match or outperform a specific benchmark. Investments in fixed income products are subject to liquidity risk, market risk, index rate risk, credit risk, inflation risk, purchasing power risk, and taxation risk. Because bond prices fluctuate continually, their yields change constantly.